today and challenge it a little bit, because in our worship series, we are covering the book of James. And this week, we were focused on faith and works. Chapter 2 is all about faith and works. And on Monday, we talked about how that measures up to Paul's message of being saved by grace, and how we compare the two. So today we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the responsibility of works going along with faith. And so my first question for today is, do you think that the church could eradicate poverty, homelessness, and hunger if we each did our part? Because people often pull up the quote from Jesus when he said, the poor will always be with us. So how do we, what is our part in this?
Well, I think our part is our part, and I don't mean to be flippant, but I mean what it means is we all need to play a part. We all need to do our part, whatever that is. And I mean, again, just literally, whether that's be kind to somebody, or whether that's help somebody out, or whether that's provide food and clothing, or whether that's work on systems that are unjust, right? Each one of us has a role to play. It's the beauty of the body of Christ. We all have a role to play, and each one of us can do it. Now, in response to your literal question, do I think we can eradicate? No, I think Jesus was right. I think because of circumstances and the human condition, unfortunately, there are always going to be unjust circumstances, and there are always going to be people who go without or do without or can't have. But can we make a substantial dent? Yeah. And can we make a substantial difference? Yes. But it does take each of us doing our own part and playing our own part. And I just think it's this, I don't want to oversimplify, but I will. I mean, it just means each one of us needs to do something, right? Quit sitting on the sideline or quit looking on from afar. Get in the game and do something. And each one of us literally can do something, and each one of us will do something different. And it doesn't matter that we're not all doing the same or all creating the same purposes, but rather we're all going towards the same goal, which is to help others and to love others. So,
well, and that's one of the things that I know as an 8 on the Enneagram, I really struggle with, and I'm guessing 3s also struggle with, is why can't we eradicate these things, like the poverty and homelessness? Like, if there is no hope for that, it feels so daunting and overwhelming, and it can start to feel like, well, it doesn't matter what I do because it's not going to fix anything. So how can I change my attitude for that?
Well, what helped me personally, because I sometimes feel the same way, is the quote from Richard Stearns, who wrote Hole in Our Gospel, when he said, "Don't fail to do something simply because you can't do everything." And I think there's huge amounts of truth in that. Don't fail to do something, whatever it is, simply because you can't do everything. Because we can get overwhelmed. And if we allow that being overwhelmed to literally shut us down or to just prevent us from even trying, then we're not going to get anywhere. But if we just do our part, whatever it is we can do, I mean, if that's as simple as, hygiene kits, or whether it's as simple as mentoring a kid, or whether it's as simple as donating some food, or perhaps it's leading legislative change, or helping with systems like IJM, International Justice Mission, to help eradicate human trafficking. Whatever it is, everybody can do something. And that something makes a difference. Without oversimplifying, it's that deal about the starfish on the ocean, right? It made a difference for that starfish. It made a difference for that starfish. I can't get rid of all of the problems, but I can do something. And I think I just need to take hold of whatever it is I can do myself.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned changing systems. And so my next question is, how can we better balance as a church mercy missions versus justice missions. And what I mean by that is when we talk about works of mercy, we are responding to a need in place. So working at a soup kitchen, providing food to those who are hungry. But justice mission is asking the question, why are they hungry? And how can we stop them from being hungry in the first place? And I feel like there's not a lot of guidance in scripture, or maybe I'm missing it, around the systemic changes that we can be a part of.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And yet the irony there is that the scripture is all about justice. And yet we tend to err on the side of, if you will, mercy. And there's nothing wrong with that because mercy and justice are necessary. They're both necessary. But it's easier to be about mercy because I can do something with that, right? I can feed the hungry and I can clothe the naked and I can. And so it's just easier. And so churches, every church I've ever served, and, you know, I'm the leader of every church I've ever served in terms of being a senior pastor. I've given over more emphasis and energy and effort towards mercy because it's easier. It's just simpler. I can get in that game. I can make that difference. I can make it happen. And clearly we need to. But we also need to participate in the greater issues of justice, like you point out. And so it's why when we did things like build water wells in Ethiopia or participate with IJM for human trafficking, we also did education around, hey, why is it that people don't have water in their villages? Or why is it that economics drive human trafficking? And so the advocacy and the education was helpful, but we didn't, as a congregation, we didn't do much more than that. But the hope was that if we could at least educate folks, then maybe they would get involved either at the legislative level or on systemic issues that could help alleviate that. But we can't do any of that until we know the why, right? I mean, as you point out, that gets at the purposes of the justice issue. And I think, unfortunately, it is a part of our human condition that we rarely want to know the why, right? Because, again, I can just feed that hungry person or I can just give some water and I've done my part, versus asking the question, well, why are these groups of people hungry and why is this happening to this group of children, right, in trafficking or whatever? It's harder. It's harder to ask the question. It's harder to answer the question. And it's harder to take action on alleviating those systemic problems. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it was something that was pointed out to me, and it's always had it's very much resonated with me. I was listening to a sermon from Reverend Rachel Bachman of Oaklawn, and she was talking about the feeding of the 5,000 and what an amazing miracle it was that Jesus was able to feed 5,000 people. But she put at the end, but maybe one of the questions we should be asking is why were 5,000 people without lunch that day? Why were 5,000 people hungry to begin with? And I had never even considered that. And it really sparked a drive in me for those justice-oriented missions.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, we have, for instance, in our own congregation, a person who, because of the partnership we entered into with IJM, he now actually goes and participates in legislative action to help change laws in America, at least, both in the state of Texas and at the national level. So he participates in that and he helps guide those conversations. And that's great. And that's participating at the justice level. Absolutely.
So at Treach, we are situated in the middle of a very affluent community. Okay. And so, well, I think so. But, and as a result of that, we do see higher levels of giving and financial generosity than a lot of other churches are able to receive, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But what if I have a lot of money and I'm giving generously? And let's say giving is one of my spiritual gifts, and I'm just constantly opening up my wallet for these missions, but I never actually show up to serve. Is there an issue with that?
Yeah. Well, I always say, let's do our part. And for some people, I do believe golly, that might be their part. But I do believe, I teach this when I teach on tithing, and people kind of get glossy-eyed a little bit or flabbergasted. But the tithe, that is 10%, comes from the concept of literally giving some of my grain or some of my animal, the first fruits of my labor. And so the tithe was not just about dollars, because it wasn't even about dollars back then. The tithe was literally based in time and talent and treasure. And so when I talk to people about tithing, I talk to them about, golly, we really need to not just be tithing our dollars, we need to be tithing our time. And guess what that looks like? If we were to tithe on our time, that means roughly 16 hours a week. I would give something to God of my time. And what about my talent? And so whatever my talent is, or my giftedness in terms of spiritual gifts, how can I give a portion of that over to God so that I can accomplish tasks or I can achieve goals? And so the tithe is not just about money. It's about the whole person, because again, when I was raising that crop or when I was raising those animals to make an offering to God, that involved my time and my talent as well as the treasure of that animal or that crop. And so I really do believe in giving and generosity being more than just money. It is my time and my talent. It's a both and. And so I do say, I hope graciously, but it may not always come off that way. Golly, it's not just about opening your wallet or offering your credit card. It's also about getting in the trenches and participating and making things happen by my actions as well.
So my last question is a big question. Have we ever done enough? Is there ever a point that I know the answer? I already know the answer. But it can start to feel who is the Greek mythological story of pushing the rock up the hill just to get to the top and it roll back on you?
Yeah, don't ask me that because I can't remember. Yeah. Yeah.
But how, and it kind of goes back to that feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. If we've never done enough, how, man, like it feels overwhelming. There's
Yes.
not a question in there.
Yeah, thanks. I would just respond this way. Number one, again, I go back to Richard Stearns and his comment of don't fail to do something simply because you can't do everything. Just be mindful of that. Recognize every little bit helps. And I hear this in fundraising. I hate to go back to the dollar thing, but I hear this in fundraising from nonprofits all the time. Your dollar gift or your $10 gift is as equally valuable as that $1,000 gift. Every little bit helps, right? But also, I would choose to say, use that as a motivator. I didn't do enough today. Well, so let me try something either more or different tomorrow. If I didn't do enough last week, maybe I can do a little bit more this week, versus allowing that to overwhelm you. Let it motivate you. Let it be an opportunity to say, gosh, what more can I do? Even if it's small, even if it's just a helping hand to somebody tomorrow, or even if it's just being kind to somebody the next day, I can always do more. And we can always look at that as the glass half empty or the glass half full. And that's all about choice. And so I would just encourage you or whoever, because again, I've been there many times myself, being overwhelmed or feeling as though there's way too much to do. Rather than let that push you down or bog you down, allow it to lift you up. Choose to let it lift you up. That's all I would say.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. And everybody, we on Friday this week for Go Beyond are going to give you one little step, one way to, kind of what Daniel was saying is every little bit helps. And so Daniel is going to, he mentioned in his message on Sunday that he always keeps a blessing bag for the homeless in his car, so that if he comes across someone on the corner, he can hand them a blessing bag. And so we are going to put together blessing bags together on Friday. So I hope that you'll tune in at 12:30. And there are a lot of different ways to put together a blessing bag, but Daniel's going to walk us through what items he chooses to put into a bag. And we'll see you then. It's just one of those little things that we can do to be of service that honestly doesn't take much time or talent. So we'll see y'all again on Friday. And as always, you can catch previous episodes at tmumc.org/go.